it's let me put it in a few times and never came over the test.
Well, good afternoon, folks. My name's Travis Moorhead. I'm the chairman of the North Carolina Mining Commission. I want to welcome you today to a meeting that's been a while in the making. We appreciate the staff and what they've done. We're not officially calling the meeting to order until we actually swear in members. So if you'll bear with us a little bit and let us swear in new members of the Mining Commission, then we'll officially call the meeting to order. I'm going to turn it over to Brian or whomever to start the swearing in process. Bill?
You good? Help us with that. You can hand me that so you can do I have placed the oath of office at each one of y'all's place. Y'all will repeat after me. I, appropriate name, do solemnly and sincerely swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States, that I will be faithful and bear true allegiance to the state of North Carolina and to the government thereof, and that I will endeavor to support and maintain, defend, the Constitution and state law. Check this. To the best of my knowledge and ability, that I will and truly execute the duties of the office of the Commissioners of North Carolina's Mining Commission, according to the best of my skills and ability, and according to the law, so help me God. If y'all would sign it, and these will highlight it for you guys. What do we do about it? What do we do about the two people online? They will have to do the office and send it to me. Yeah. Okay. Mr. Connor and Mr. Bonnie, I will email you a copy of this. Please sign it and have it notarized and email it back to me.
Okay.
Does everybody got pens? I make mistakes. Did everybody sign in? Not a member of the commission or not a member of state government? They don't have to sign in, do they?
Members don't necessarily have to sign in, they can. We want them to.
You want to sign in? Sure.
Oh, you did that to me. Oh, fine. That's fine. I'm gonna get that.
Wait a minute. This is
Do I select those or? I think I keep those on file. You all want copies of them? Ceremony. Let's make sure that everybody stands up and repeats after. Yeah, well, together. You can do it together.
I have it back then.
You may have it.
Yeah, I can.
We all have to say it.
No, I I thought I had it to the, no, they're going through the, it's gonna get to you. Get another one going.
You can always blame it on me too. I'm insistent on it, but you can always blame it on me, because I was the one insistent on it, but we got to do, it's one thing we don't want to screw up.
Yeah, yeah, you. Time or do you?
Thank you, sir.
You guys.
You have a copy so she can read from it?
They'll see it. We'll see it on the screen.
Me, or you gonna do one by one? I'm gonna do something.
Gentlemen, if members will stand up and be sworn in, make sure we get all the I's and cross all the T's. Raise your right hand and insert your name with the appropriate section.
Yes, and we're gonna do one sentence at a time, this way it's not the whole thing. So I, and you're gonna say your name,
I, Travis Moore,
Hi, Jason Connor.
do solemnly and sincerely swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States,
Solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States.
United States.
that I will be faithful and bear true allegiance to the state of North Carolina,
that I will be faithful and truly
Of North Carolina.
and to the constitutional powers and authorities which are or may be established for the governor thereof,
Constitutional powers and authorities which are or may be established for the government thereof.
and that I will endeavor to support, maintain, and defend the Constitution of said state,
I will endeavor to support, maintain, and defend the Constitution of said state.
not inconsistent with the Constitution of the United States,
Not inconsistent with the Constitution of the United States.
to the best of my knowledge and ability,
To the best of my knowledge and abilities.
that I will well and truly execute the duties of the office of Commissioner of North Carolina Mining Commission,
well and truly execute the duties of the office
North Carolina Mining Commission.
according to the best of my skill and ability,
According to the best of my
Best of my skill and ability.
according to law, so help me God.
according to law.
Oh, my God.
Thank you. Just making sure.
Mr. Chair, can you hear me? Can anybody hear me?
All right. Thank you for bearing with us on that. We will officially call the meeting to order. And I have a conflict of interest statement that I need to read. The State Government Ethics Act mandates that at the beginning of each meeting, the chair reminds members of their obligation to avoid conflict of interest or the appearance of conflicts of interest, and to inquire as the whether any member knows of any conflict or potential conflict of interest related to the matters coming before the commission today. If any members knows of any conflict of interest or the appearance of a conflict of interest related to the matters coming before the commission today, please state so at this time. All right, hearing none. We will move on. The first order of business is the election of the vice chair for the commission. So if we would want to consider nominations for vice chair, gentlemen.
Nominate Sam Bratton.
Motion to nominate Sam. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, Mr. Hutchins. Any discussion? Sam, I hope that's all right with you.
Fine with me.
All right. No further discussion. We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? It's unanimous. Thank you, Sam, for doing that.
Yes, sir.
We are split today, folks that are joining us electronically. We have some members that were unable to make it to Raleigh today. So we're going to have a general bylaws discussion about how we want to handle that going forward. I know that Jason was unable at the last minute to make it today. So he needs to, he will, I'm sure, take care of the swearing in obligation, but also anything else. But we need to just talk about how we want to handle that in the future. Any other bylaws from the staff's perspective that we ought to look into today to have a discussion about? Not seeing anybody from the staff. Okay, so how in the past, gentlemen, how would you like to proceed with handling virtual meetings and virtual attendance to mining commission?
Well, given this era of COVID, I'm sure that, and the way that things have progressed with the technology, I think it's certainly possible to have.
Okay.
I agree with that, just so long we have all the information in front of us, you know.
Okay. What, would telephonic be all right, or do you want us to actually see someone's face? I mean, does it have to be virtual, as in, you know, seeing Jason on the screen, or is the telephone all right in your mind's eye?
I think you need some confirmation that that person is the one that you're speaking with, so I think visual would be necessary to confirm attendance.
All right. Any other items related to either attendance or bylaws that come to mind that the commission would like to discuss? If there aren't any, could I ask for a motion to what's been suggested, that we allow people, members of the commission, to participate with visual confirmation via GoToMeeting or whatever medium that it may be. That's how you'd like to proceed.
Make a motion for virtual attendance. Okay. Visual virtual attendance.
Motion by Sam.
Second that.
Second by Brian.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, before we proceed the meeting, and we haven't all been introduced, I'm Philip Reynolds, I'm your lawyer, and Mr. Bratton, you probably should have checked first, because I hear tell that the vice chair has to pay the retainer for the lawyer. Just kidding, of course. But again, I'm Philip Reynolds. You're going to be hearing from me a little bit more later about open meetings and public records. I'm a special deputy attorney general. I'm here to make sure just that the trains run on time. I'm not your subject matter expert, but you do have an excellent staff that's well versed in all of this stuff that will help you through. Before you proceed to a vote, Mr. Chairman, if I may suggest, one of the things that I found helpful in all the years, this is my 17th year representing commissions, is to put together a draft of the bylaws for the commissioners to consider. And it'll contain a few general items, but also and I would take by this motion, if it passes, I would take that we would include the idea that members can participate remotely via some form that allows for visual confirmation. And we can include that in there. Okay. And if it's the commission, yours and the commission's pleasure for us to put that together, we can do that for the next meeting and share it around.
Great. So it should be a staff, it's a directive from the commission. They have to develop bylaws consistent with what's been mentioned.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Would you read them in that motion? Okay, in a second. Okay. So
Mr. Chair, if I may, We have a draft that I can share on the screen and folks can look at it. It doesn't have all the bells and whistles and probably doesn't address all the bylaws, but it lays out a format that would address if there's any obvious omissions or things that you want to add, we can certainly address it with some notes here and then send out a draft to everyone else
Okay.
at a later date if that's agreeable.
Sure, absolutely. So there is a presentation. There, you have something to show.
I do.
Okay, great.
Give me 1 second. I'll share that. Yeah. Yeah. I'll see if I can expand that and make it a little easier to see. Apologize for. Maybe fine. Just the one. Okay, yeah, that's fine. So these are this is a list of internal operating procedures that have been pulled from another commission. You can call it bylaws, internal operating procedures, however you'd like to proceed. But essentially, it lays out the authority, and most of these have been and this is from our Sedimentation Control Commission, their internal procedures. It basically lays out officers and staff and their roles. We've gone through the chair being nominated, named by the governor, and then we've just elected Commissioner Bratton as the vice chair. So we're in line with that already. And then it talks about calling special meetings. There was some recent legislation that talked about ways to call a special meeting through 4 letters of request to the chair. And we'll go back and verify that this matches the that recent legislation that came through so that we get the procedures right there. And then there's some additional information about quorum, and I will leave this up to Philip. As I understand it, it was still a majority as a quorum for the commission, so we will keep that information there. We have to provide an open public meeting. Philip would be talking about that just in a few minutes. But there is an allowance where executive session can be called per the statute. And we'll make sure all these references are correct as it applies to non-commission. We go through talking about how we're going to keep records. That information will be done through a variety of with the hybrid meeting option being in place. We have a recording that's going right now of the hybrid meeting. We have backup through an audio recording, and then we'll also be taking notes. So there will be a variety of ways we document what goes on in the meetings. And then we get into standard order of business. This is an example of how the Sedimentation Commission lays out their agenda. We've done a much more simplified version for this particular meeting, but happy to change it to however you feel is necessary. We've got the call to order already on there, ethics statement, recognition of those attending, any swearing in that's been done. And then next meeting, we'll have minutes. You'll have had a chance to review those, provide your approval to those minutes. Then if there are action items or information items, we'll move through those, and then concluding remarks. Typically, the director has provided comments. If you want to hear from me, I'm happy to stay silent. So, and then as we go, and we'll talk about this in a little bit, there's some committee members or committee leads that may want to, once the committees get set up, provide reports from where they've met, information they've discussed, decisions they've made, proposals to the commission. Each commission member will get a chance to provide a comment if they so choose, and then, of course, the chair, you would have a chance to make a comment. One thing that we have not put on the agenda today, and this is completely up to the commission to decide on, some commissions allow public comment or accept public comment at the time of the commission meeting, and others do not. It is completely up to you and what your personal feelings are there, so we can add or subtract that as part of it. And again, this is just a general layout. We'll send this to everybody, so please provide your comments as this goes along. That's about notice requirements. These are pretty standard. And then it gets into committees. Some of our commissions have committees that are named in law that they have to have. That, to my knowledge, is not the case for the Mining Commission. Is that, Toby, do you know of any named committees by law?
No.
And so the ability to develop a committee that you think is relevant, whether it's a technical committee for the commission or some sort of educational outreach committee. If we get into civil penalties, there may be requests for remission, that a remission committee could be put together, those kinds of things. So some thoughts on that might be good from you, and we can move forward with developing those committees or some bylaws regarding those committees. Scrolling all down, Robert's rules is of order, or how the parliamentary procedures will happen with the commission. And then, should we get into hearings? Probably not as many opportunities for hearings with the Mining Commission as maybe some of the other commissions, but it lays out some procedures there and how that's going to happen. And as I mentioned, remissions is something that is handled by most commissions, but I don't know that that's the duty of this committee. This commission is going to be at remissions in a significant way. And then we get down to attendance, conflicts of interest. Should there be a conflict of interest with a commission member, what that procedure would be. Typically, the commission member would just recuse themselves. They cannot participate in the discussions of the topic or vote on it. It's just a general procedure. And then how you would change these bylaws should changes be necessary. And then it would be signed by the chair. I hope I didn't bore anybody too much, but that's just, I just wanted you to see the general layout of what that would look like. Have major concerns, please let us know. We're happy to change that around to meet your needs, and we'll send it out with, once we've made sure all the statutory references are correct and the relevant pieces are in there, and then we'll be happy to modify that for the group and put it on the SharePoint site that you should all have access to now, and you can see the changes as they happen.
Okay. Thanks, Brian. So the motion's been amended to direct staff to draft some bylaws with the inclusion, for our review, with the inclusion of the visual virtual meeting attendance. That's how we left it, with a second being amended. Any more discussion from the commissioners? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? It is unanimous. Thank you. Thank you, Brian. Appreciate that. Before I turn it over to Philip, I wanted to ask, Brian mentioned to me earlier before we got here that there was a comment, there were questions about whether we wanted to host or hold public comments today. I'm certainly open to that. We're here to do the business of the people of North Carolina. So, but I wanted to hear from commissioners. Do you want to hear public comment today, or do you want to continue with our agenda as is and move on?
I have no objections to that. I have none.
Okay, great. If we could, for those that wanted to speak public comment, there was a sign-up roster I know that went around that wanted to speak. I don't have that in front of me, but if you do want to speak, we're going to ask that you keep your comments limited to 3 minutes, and I will I'll be the timer for that. And so if you could, if you wish to speak, state your name, your address, and your business, and we'll be happy to hear those comments. So I will call, please forgive my pronunciation. Why? Okay, sir, you're being recognized for 3 minutes.
I speak here?
Yeah, you can stand in the middle and at 3 minutes. Yes, sir.
Yeah, thank you. So my name is Hua Huang. I'm from 7401 Ebenezer Church Road, Raleigh 27612. I'm not going to use the whole 3 minutes. I'm just here because I'm also the current chair of the Capital Group of North Carolina Sierra Club. Just want to say thanks for letting the people know that you have this meeting. And I hope that the discussion in the meeting will remain open to the public as you will, because a lot of information, there's a lot of things you're talking about here. It's obviously going to impact the community, the natural resources. So if you can, again, going forward, ensure that the information is public, that'd be great. And if there's option for people who sign in virtually to give public comment in the future, I really appreciate it since you're already in hybrid. Just some thoughts, and I'll let the next speaker speak.
Thank you. Thank you so much, sir. The next speaker, Natalie Liu.
Hi. So Natalie Liu, I'm at PO Box 80035, Raleigh 27623. Did not know we were going to be able to speak, so I really don't have anything, but I'm going to take this time. I jotted a few things down. And I just want to, basically say, hopefully as the Mining Commission, you can respect the needs of the public, especially when it comes to parks and private homes, then protect those things from the adverse effects of open mine pits. Just want to avoid conflict of, any kind of conflict of interest. And especially it's, this is a difference between private land and public land. Land deeded to the public, we don't think is a place for a private rock quarry, no matter who's managing that land is deeded to the public. And I can tell you, I'm sure you're all familiar with the whole Oddfellows Quarry proposal. Having been actively involved from that, we get people on the far right, Trump supporters on the far left, that when it comes to public land, it involves everybody. We don't care what your political agenda is. So we definitely appreciate you guys that are businessmen and you want to make money. We want to have mine pits, and we are not against mines at all. We're just against mines that are on land that's deeded to the public, especially when that land has been on the state park critical acquisition list since the 70s. And I've actually read a lot of stuff from the 1970s. And that particular piece of land, the Oddfellows, it came under management. It's not owned by the airport, but it came under management of the airport for the sole purpose of being traded to Umstead State Park. So as a whole, just hope that you act in the interest of the public when it does come to things that is deeded to the public. Thank you very much.
The next person, again, Zai Sokon. I apologize if I mispronounced your name. See no one step forward.
What?
We have one person online as well who I can unmute.
Sure. Is that?
Jordan Peters.
Okay, great. Mr. Peters.
Hello, my name is Jordan Peters. I live at 222 Solandra Lane of Apex, North Carolina, 27593. I frequently use Umstead Park for the gravel for bike riding and to hike on the trails. I don't have much to say other than please keep in mind the public interest and how many users we have using this state park every single day. The parking lots are consistently full. And a quarry in this general area would ruin nature's beauty. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right. I see no one else moving present here online. If that, we'll go ahead and close public comment. Thank you, folks, for your comments. We appreciate that. I'm going to turn it over to our attorney, Mr. Philip Reynolds.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, Philip Reynolds, it's a pleasure to be here with you all on the first meeting. The Mining Commission had been around for a long time, we got combined and then back out. And here we all are again. I'm going to see if the staff can pull up my presentation for me. So while it's coming up, as you all are probably all very familiar with, the commission is a public body, and along with that come certain duties and responsibilities. And we're going to talk about two of those duties and responsibilities today, being those related to the Public Records Act and the law. Now, one of these I'll make sure and bring up because, believe it or not, it's one of the few laws on the book where an individual commissioner can be held responsible for attorney's fees. So I make sure to always bring this one up and warn everybody accordingly so that nobody is surprised if the issue comes up. But I have no doubt that everybody here will not have any issues with this. And so I'm confident that we'll be able to avoid any issues, and you won't have to hear from me very often. So this sort of at the beginning here, just what we're talking about, the information I provide to you, I am the Attorney General's representative here. The Attorney General represents you. He has, in his infinite wisdom, chosen me to do that. I got to choose myself because I'm responsible for the section that handles representation of all the DEQ-related commissions. I also represent the Environmental Management Commission and the Soil and Water Conservation Commission, and have represented others. And I think everybody here will appreciate this, or maybe not appreciate this. I'm just glad y'all are not the Marine Fisheries Commission, which is something I used to represent. It's the hottest topic east of 95 that no one's ever heard of. West of 95, no one's ever heard of, and everybody east of 95 gets into fist fights at Thanksgiving over it. So I'm glad to be here with you fine folks. Okay, so let's start with the Public Records Act. Essentially, everything you do, every document you receive or create as part of your duties is a public record. The general rule is it's a public record unless it's not, meaning that it has to meet a certain exemption for it not to be a public record. But what does that mean for you all? It means that you have to maintain your public records, and in the event, as we'll discuss here shortly, in the event someone asks for it, you have to be able to provide copies. Now, your keeper of the record is your staff, it's the department, so they will generally have copies of all of your records. But the important thing is not where you receive these records, it's not how these records were created, but what those records contain. If it's anything related to the real or apparent jurisdiction within the commission, and it's created or received as part of your duties here on the commission, then it is a public record. Right, clear on that? Any questions? Pretty simple, very broad. And you can see here on the screen, we've got some definitions. A public record shall mean all documents, papers, letters, maps, books, photographs, films, sound recordings, magnetic or other tapes, which is not something you hear very often anymore, right? I remember doing that in the library in school, skimming through those magnetic tapes. Electronic data processing records, artifacts, or other documentary material, regardless of physical form or characteristics. And I always stop and emphasize that. Regardless of form or characteristics, made or received pursuant to law or in accordance or in connection with the transaction of public business. That's what you all are here doing, public business. At the end of your term, if you'll go to the next slide, you're responsible for turning over those records. They may be required. The department does, in fact, have a records retention schedule that they can inform you more about and how to turn those things over. I know Dr. Taylor particularly has plenty of experience with that because he also sits on other commissions and boards, and he and I have worked together for many years now. So at the end of your term, you will be responsible for turning things over and discussing with the department how best to transfer those things, what needs to be transferred and what doesn't. And I think, Brian, help me remember, they all have email addresses now for the.
We're currently trying to get all those resolved. Everyone has one assigned. It's that a few folks have a problem with the registration process.
So I bring up the email address for a reason. They're not There's only one commission that I'm aware of that requires you to have an official state government email address. Everybody else is required to, or not required to, they maintain an email address for their convenience and ease. And they usually keep it separated out from their, say, business accounts or their personal account. They usually set up, the chair of the EMC has Robin Smith EMC@gmail.com. Right? So that way the records aren't commingled, and you can say everything that needs to be sent to me related to the Mining Commission should go to this address. Now, the department is providing you all access to their emails, and that's a very beneficial convenience to have because by directing everybody to that email address and being able to copy that email address on your correspondence, all those records are going to be maintained here and can be searched through by the department in the event that they need to respond to any public records request. So it makes things a lot easier. Now, one thing I'll tell you is that you do have to keep up access to that email address, and that's kind of hard. Because you forget that you need to sign in once a month to that email address because you're not going to necessarily meet every month. But you have to go in and sign in just to make sure that you keep the system up and active. And I know that Brian and the staff will tell you all how to do that. But remember, it's a very good convenience to have. And if you're corresponding with someone, use that address. Make sure people understand that that's the address you'd like things to be sent to. And in the event they send it to you in some other form or some other address, I would encourage you to reply back to them and copy your state account and say, please direct all future correspondence to this email address. And that will keep things simple for you all. If you have any questions about that individually, I encourage you to either talk to the staff, or talk to me. I'm glad to talk to you about that a little bit further. Okay, next slide, please. We've talked about this a little bit. Public records request, as I said, the department is the keeper of your records, but you will have an obligation in the event a public records request is submitted. You'll have an obligation to comb through your records to determine whether you have any public records that meet or fall within the type of documents being requested. And that's your individual responsibility to do. And I know that the staff will work with you to collect those documents and make sure that they're turned over. So now, any questions on public records before we move to open meetings laws? Yes.
These meetings, are they videotaped and then available for review at a later date?
They are, right? They are video, they are recorded.
How do you access those?
What we'll do is, we've got a recording and correct me if I'm wrong, Josh, we can save a recording from this meeting. We save it on the SharePoint site and on the, yeah.
Typically, yeah, we record them, and then most public meetings go onto DEQ's YouTube page, and then that way we'll link it to the site as well.
Okay, so we can put it on the Mining Commission site with a link to the YouTube page.
We all can be YouTube stars, right?
Asking.
Yeah, no, get dozens of views of it.
Dozens. It doesn't.
Okay, so if there's no more questions about Public Records Act, and we'll actually talk about the minutes here in just a minute. We'll move on to the open meetings law. And I always start with the open meetings law with the statement of public policy, because I think it's a very important one I find very impactful. And it states that whereas the public bodies that administer the legislative, policymaking, quasi-judicial, administrative, and advisory functions of North Carolina and its political subdivisions exist solely to conduct the people's business. It is the public policy of North Carolina that the hearings, deliberations, and actions of these bodies be conducted openly. Essentially, we're here for the public and the people of North Carolina, and therefore we do the people's business in an open setting. Please. Now, with limited exceptions, here's what must be open to the public. You'll see the second bullet point there, public body, you all obviously fall in that broad definition. And because you're a public body, you must ensure that that for any meeting, it's open to the public and that any person is entitled to attend a meeting. Now, what is an official meeting? It's not just any time that we are all in a room together. It's any time that we are, when I say we, I use the royal, we really mean y'all because we have the votes I don't. I'm a member of your staff. But anytime you all are together as a majority, what would otherwise be considered a quorum, then you're required to disclose that to the public and notice it as a public meeting with a limited exception. And I want to point out here at the last part of D, the official meeting, one of the few times you'll see this in the law is that you're allowed to, as a group, have a social gathering, as long as that social gathering is not intended to evade the spirit of the law. The spirit and purpose of the law. We don't see that very often in other acts, but we see it here. And what it says is that mainly members of commissions, believe it or not, can become friends, and they can have social functions, they can have holiday functions and things like that, and get together and not have to notice every time they're at a golf tournament or in the same building at the same time, as long as for a social function. But the law is very clear that you can't claim that it's a social function and have it in an attempt to evade the spirit of the law. You can't go to a social function and break out into a meeting, essentially what that means. So when you're talking about public meetings and thinking about conducting deliberations, remember, if there's a question, the fallback is you have to comply with the spirit of the law. All right, so next slide. We talked about meeting minutes a minute ago. All of your meetings will have meeting minutes. Now, your actual meeting minutes are going to be the recording, because that's the full recording of the commission meeting and everything that takes place and all of your actions that have to take place in public. They'll all be recorded, but you'll also get a paper document to summarize your meetings, and you'll be asked to vote on those minutes at each of your meetings. And what those minutes do is essentially ratifies the actions of the commission that were taken at the last meeting. It says, hey, even if you weren't there, you still have a vote. It says, hey, these are the things that we did at the last meeting, and we're saying, yeah, those are okay, and that's what we want to stick with. We are sticking with that, and we're ratifying those actions. Now, next slide, please. Closed sessions. You are permitted to have closed sessions, and there is a whole host of reasons why you're allowed to have closed sessions. But I've copied up here on this presentation, and I can send it out, have it sent out to everybody as well, in case they would like to have it. You all are dying to have some additional reading material to keep by your nightstand so that you can have something to fall asleep by at night. But the permitted purposes include to discuss, to avoid the disclosure of confidential or privileged information, and to consult with your attorney about legal matters as described further there. Next slide, please. When calling a meeting, there are certain things that you have to, or a closed session rather, there are certain things that you have to state to make sure that you're entering into it properly. And that is when you're moving to a closed session, there has to be a motion. It has to state the reason why that you're moving into a closed session, such as to consult with an attorney regarding ongoing litigation. And if it's litigation, then you would state the name of the case, and I can help the members here with that ahead of time to make sure that they understand and comply with this, because we don't want to enter into a closed session properly. Once we enter into a closed session, it's important to understand that we can't discuss general policy matters. Those types of things have to be discussed open and in public, but we can't discuss particulars of case matters in litigation, or for the reasons why we call it a closed session. We can discuss those, but it can't just be, hey, we're in a closed session now, we can talk about anything. Go into a closed session for a particular purpose, you stick to that purpose, then you move out of closed session. And typically you'll see that if this commission goes into a closed session, you'll hear me say out loud, once we move out of a closed session, this is what was discussed. That way we have now minutes of that closed session as well. I disclose it for the record as well. Okay. I think that is, let me see. Next slide, public notice. We talked about this a little bit earlier. You have public notice of when your meeting is going to be called, and you're going to talk about your regular schedule of meetings here soon and when those are. It's important to have a regular schedule in place, even if individual members can't physically be present, if they have to be remote, or if they have to miss the meeting entirely. It's important to have a regular schedule because we put that schedule out for the Secretary of State. That serves as our notice. We include it on our website, on DEQ's website. I keep saying our, but I don't work for DEQ, I work for the AG's office. It's included on your website, and it says this is when we're going to meet. And then within that meeting, you're allowed to take up any matters that are within your jurisdiction and handle any business that the commission deems necessary. And the reason I make that distinction about a regular scheduled meeting is because the opposite, not the opposite, there are special meetings, right? So special meetings are different than regular scheduled meetings. And special meetings, when called, are required to stick to the topics for which and the purpose for which the special meeting was called. In other words, you can't just have a general special meeting where you can talk about anything. You have to save that for your regular meetings. You want to call a special meeting or emergency meeting, state the reason. This is what we're calling it for. This is what's going to be discussed. This is what's on the agenda. And then you stick to that and nothing else. So that's why it's important to have your regular schedule, your schedule of regular meetings out there in advance, and you do that each year. These, if you're going to meet 4 times a year, these are the 4 times we're going to meet this year. Here's our regular schedule. You go through that regular schedule, and then if the need arises, the chair can call a special meeting as well. Any questions on that? Okay, great. You're doing a great job. You guys don't have any questions. So I am killing it today. So I told you at the beginning of this that the reason I always point out the open meetings law to everyone is because it does involve the prospect of having to be responsible for attorney's fees. The only thing worse than losing a case is losing a case and having to pay the other people for beating it. I'll tell you that on that side of it before. But if a party prevails in an action under the open meetings law, not only can they have an injunction prohibiting the commission from violating it in the future, not only can they have declared null and void the offending action of the commission, but the judge can also award attorney's fees against individual members found to have been in violation. So it's really important that we stick to the law, not just because it's the right thing to do, but because there's also a personal interest in avoiding violations of the open meetings law. And we can talk about that in the unlikely event it ever happens. We can talk about that further. Of course, I'm glad to talk to each of you individually, you being fit or needed. Okay. And with that, Mr. Chairman, unless there's any questions?
I do have one question for my clarification. So can you speak to emails being, there were more than
Yes.
one or
Yes.
two?
Yes, I'm glad to talk about emails, and that's important because lots of times you'll get a group email, right? You'll get a group email to all the members of the commission, either from staff or from someone outside of the public. A meeting, as I said earlier, is not simply you all sitting in the room together. A meeting is defined as any time that you are or have the ability to deliberate matters within the real or apparent jurisdiction of the commission, and you do so simultaneously. So that would include emails. So you can't send around emails about how you're going to vote, what you're voting on, and deliberate through emails because you're not doing that in a public setting. You have to save that stuff for a public setting. And a public setting can be a conference call. I have commissions who have conference calls pretty regularly. They have them through remote meetings electronically, with cameras, et cetera. The term is escaping me at the moment. But you need to be careful when you get a group email that you don't respond as a group and save your deliberations for the actual meetings themselves in whatever form that they take. Now, that does not mean that you cannot individually email a member of staff or me or have an email to me that you copy the chair on, or have an email to Brian that you copy the chair on. That's two folks. That's not a meeting. That's not a quorum, right? You can ask those questions. But I ask that you please do your best to avoid responding all and respond to all, even if the matter seems relatively trivial. If you get one, an email to everybody, try to avoid hitting reply all. Now, I'll tell you, everything that I've said, that my opening slide noted, everything is fact specific. So I can't tell you that this will happen every time, or this is how the courts will rule every time. We have to look at things individually. All I'm giving you is some general rules of thumb to proceed by. And of course, again, if you have any questions, please let me know. Thank you. Cover it, Mr. Chair.
Yes, thank you very much. Any questions from the members of the commission?
Get in touch with you. What's your contact information?
Brian, what is your number? I'll be glad to hand out cards afterward.
Okay, great.
So if you're going to be sending this out, sending the presentation out,
Yes, sir. I'll do that, and along with my contact information as well. And I'll have some cards for everybody as well.
okay, just, Brian had sent out sorry, I didn't mean to jump on, but Brian had sent out kind of the agenda and also the presentation materials. So anything we can get in advance prior to the commission meeting to review will be more subsequent as far as questions or understanding might be useful.
Absolutely. Did you have something?
I was gonna just let y'all know y'all be getting emails for the state emails very shortly. I was out last week, and I just haven't had a chance to get to it this week.
All right. Any further discussion from staff or commission? Okay. Well, with that, we'll do our duty here and move on and talk about public notice in the form of upcoming meetings for the commission. There are two proposed dates for 2022 that I'd like for you all to consider. I'm not sure how much this has been discussed, but August 23rd and October 19th are meeting dates that the staff have and I have sort of earmarked as potential meeting dates for the commission. Brian, or Bill, any further comments from your perspective?
I think the October date is October 18, not 19.
October 18th, sorry. So August 23rd and October 18th. Any discussion about those dates? We'll go ahead and, if there is none, we'll go ahead and take a motion to adopt those dates as official meeting dates for 2022.
Motion to adopt the dates.
Thank you. Motion, second.
Second.
Second. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Those dates are adopted. Yes, sir.
Mr. Chair, if you don't mind, when we have motions and seconds, if we could say who it is for our records.
You're right. I was supposed to roll call you.
So just so that we have a documentation of who's
Yes, sir.
doing that.
Yes, sir. I do. So that motion was by Mr. North, seconded. I missed this. Oh, Mr. Byers. Thank you.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Will the meetings be the same time of day, or are we gonna, is it typically a 4-hour slot, or what is 3 hours?
We have this room reserved for those 2 days from 1 to 4.
Okay.
If there's a desire to change the times within the day, or we need an extended day for a fuller agenda, we can certainly make those changes. We're far enough out in advance. I don't think it's a problem if folks want to make it a morning meeting. We knew that we had at least one commission member coming from the western part of the state, so we were trying to provide some reasonable travel hours, but it's completely up to you. We'll set it up however the commission would like.
I don't have a preference. I just wanted to know.
Okay. All right. Thank you for adopting those two dates. I will turn it over to Mr. Miller and Mr. Parr for the mining program summary.
My name's David Miller. I'm your state mining engineer. For those who do not know me, I just left. This is Adam Parr, your assistant state mining engineer. He's the one that does most of your permits. He does a great job. So I have to take the call. And there's also Toby here, who's actually done my I also like to introduce Brenda Harris, who's our administrative assistant. If you have questions concerning mailing, stuff like that, she is the person to go to. We also have two inspectors out in the field, Shauna Riddle and James Edwards, whose responsibilities are approximately 50% with mines in their particular regions. Shauna's up in the mountains, and Mr. Edwards is towards Washington. There is a third position in Archidale that is currently open. That is the assistant mining engineer, still by Gina, who took a job in industry. This job has been proven to be very hard to get someone to accept. We've posted it 3 times. It's been turned down by the candidates, even though they sent us resumes. We are working on having that changed. When we classify the job, and hopefully we can get a broader field of people to apply, and hopefully there'll be a little bit of additional money. I'm also requesting a 4th person for Archidale. If you look at the law, look at what's required, we're not doing certain things to the letter of the law. And the other aspect is the billing. It takes up a lot more time than you would think. But I have to justify that. We're working on that too. Finally, I'm going to just give you guys a heads up. I'm planning to retire August this year. So you'll be looking for a new state manager. Next slide, please. This flow chart, I think Mr. Davis came up with, shows you the complexity of the situation. I think one of the things you don't realize with the permitting process is the first 30 days you submit an application, we have to send it out to certain agencies that are required by the law. If we feel there are other agencies that need to comment on it, we have to do that. So in reality, other than some basic work, we lose the first 21 to 28 days waiting for comment from other federal and state agencies. So we have basically 30 days to get a reply back to the applicant. This particularly becomes a big problem on the situation of public hearings. The law says we have 30 days, not 60. I'd love that to be changed. But that's what it is, and we're doing okay with it. Next slide. All those dots represent mining sites. Currently, we have 741 life of mine sites. I'll give you the breakdown. You can see it. It's quite a diverse group. And that's it. A legacy problem is we have, next slide, please. We have 57 what I call orphan sites. These are sites where the permits have expired. We're still holding the security. They haven't been released. The state's still responsible for those sites. Supposedly, I have $3 million+ in the safe to adjust that. I just took a call yesterday from a neighbor complaining about an orphan site that was being mined. I've contacted that region. It's not uncommon. The good news is the regional office would like to get rid of these orphan sites also. Are starting to get more involved. As I noted here, we're down from 90 when I first started. And the oldest one goes back to September 1996. Some of these are laying around. I will admit there are some that are difficult to handle. Dimension stone is particularly an issue because they've been laying around so long. The ones who did put the chain link fences up, those fences have rotted away. So I'm still working on how best to secure those sites for public safety. Next slide, please. For those who are not familiar with the mining permit, there's a concept you guys understand. You've got the property, you've got the permitted area, and you've got the disturbed area. The disturbed area could be equal to the permitted area. Disturbed area, permitted area can be equal to the property boundary. It's all one group. The site I worked for many moons ago had 825 acres. 250 of that was permitted. Permitted to disturb up to about 50 acres of it. It's all the same piece of property. As of December 31st, we had 137,000 acres permitted, a little bit less than Clay County in area, if you want to conceptually vision that. Clay County's up in the mountain. I'll figure out where that is. Currently, we have 81,000 acres bonded. The program released 451 acres last year, which is not bad, actually. We are working to clean up the backlogs. Next slide, please. Fees coming in. Currently, annual fees should be somewhere close to 280,000. According to our records, 79 sites have not paid. When we try to reconcile the records, we find out there's a discrepancy there. If we've got 740 sites, we should have about 30 sites that haven't paid. Unfortunately, I hope to clean this up as soon as I can, but it takes time. The previous 3 billing cycles, I managed to get this down to 10 or 15 people. And in this case, we got messed up. But this consumes a lot of time when you're trying to chase people down. Right. Once you catch up with them, they're usually very happy to pay. As you can see, using the mining program, it tracks the money, and the state ledger system, the $3,000 discrepancy, that is most likely late fees that were paid on the annual fees. That money goes to the schools. And it sometimes gets messed up in the ledgers. The fees that we take in for doing modifications or greenfield sites and stuff like that generally runs between $80,000 to $120,000. Most years it's been, this is pretty close, 114,000. So basically the program is about a $400,000 a year program. Next slide, please. These are the enforcement cases. When I first started this job, they had me go back and look at all the mining records, mining commission records, and back when Tracy was doing this job, he did a lot of enforcements. The Hugh Smith pit, or better known as Bellamy pit, that's part of the problems you're going to discover is you call it one thing, calls it something else, there's a little discrepancy. This was a site that had problems that went all the way back to 2012. This is the first one I did, and I came up with a $100,000 fine, and the Attorney General's office, maybe that's a little too aggressive. So it got, and that's got down to approximately $18,000, $19,000. People still have not paid. They're about ready to mine out the site. The Attorney General office is working on this. The Casey Bailey line was, man, put in an application, it was about done. He had a contract he had to fill, so he went right on in and started mining and got caught. He got to donate 5,000 for the school. Anderson, Gerald Anderson is an interesting character. He had 2 permits back in the 90s, which he defaulted on. So he was basically barred from having a mining permit. So he got his wife to file the application. If you read the law, that doesn't work. But they also had a contract, and they went in and started mining, and they got caught. We fined them, and we denied their permit. Tony Merritt Gravel is now Merritt Gravel. He was not being nice to his neighbors. For that, he was fined $19,600. I have been working on this site last 4 years. I'm still working on that site. Would not be surprised to see that I'll have to find him again. They're doing a much better job, that's all I can say, but they're still playing games out there. Yes, sir.
Could you go into a little bit more detail on what type of, each one of these operations, sand pit?
Hugh Smith is sand pit. Casey Bailey was dirt. He's up near Winston-Salem, Greensboro. Anderson, that was sand. That was in Craven County. Tony Merritt is mining weathered granite. Packs very nicely and also roads very nicely. He has gotten down to rock, and he also has beneficial fill. For those who don't know what beneficial fill is, that's a mixture of dirt, gravel, concrete, asphalt, whatever. He, in his last modification, got permission to have a crusher on the site. So he's now crushing up concrete that's coming in and selling it. That's fine. I'd rather get a second use than just filling up a hole. He is supposed to be refilling his hole. He has built a mountain on the backside of the property. It's under waste. He's trying hard to get that back into the mining permit. Waste would like us to take it over. Orange County would like us to take it over. I'm not so sure I want to take it over. Recently, once he got his permit straightened out, there was an error made back around 2010 when they permitted the site. They allowed the haul road to straddle the permit line. The haul road needed to be completely in the permit. That was a big holdup on this last revision to get him straightened out. Cost him a half acre. They had to add a half acre to the property. The neighbor's not happy about that. I get, well, I guess about 6 or 7 emails from this neighbor on a weekly basis. That's what it is. I can't use the photographs she sends them. It does tell us what's going on out there. Mr. Merritt and his family was doing a nice job of reclaiming one of the high walls that they've had for years. They had it nicely sloped, and then they started building another mountain. They have been warned that they're going to have to make sure that mountain does not exceed the volume of material that's going to be in that hole. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, I was just interested.
Can I ask any questions concerning these sites? There are 3 more enforcement cases pending, but since they haven't been resolved, I don't think it'd be appropriate for me to go into it. I will say one of them is for Flat Rock. Next slide, please. As I've alluded, programs initiatives, as I've alluded, the program really probably needs 4 engineers to do everything that's required under the law, clean up backlogs, And more importantly, something Adam and both would love, is to get out of the office and get out and work with you guys. But we're busy, extremely busy. You know, the simple fact that Adam took in $114,000 in fees last year for modifications tells you how many permits went through that door. Our fee structure for modification is $750 to $1,000, depending on the acreage. If you're doing a greenfield, it's $3,500 or $5,000. A lot of applications. Give you a feel for some of the responsibilities, and these lines do get blurred. Adam's a great assistant, and he sometimes picks up some of my loads. I handle now enforcements, management, annual fees, safe inspections, mining commission, special projects, permitting. Adam's handling, he handles, I would, in all honesty, I would have to say probably 97% of permits. I do have a few permits, I get the troublemakers. He does most of the digital management. He's constantly hitting on my head because I'm not following it the way he wants me to. He's slowly teaching me right. He's also involved with safe. He's also will be involved in enforcements, inspections, training, and special projects. If we get the 2 state special engineers, they're going to be primarily doing permitting and inspections, but they'll also be involved in annual reclamation reports and special projects. Program initiatives. We need to be auditing the safe. What is the safe? Where we put your securities. As we can figure out, there has not been a top to bottom audit on that safe since the early 90s. This is extremely alarming. I attended a meeting class recently on securities, and some of the Western states were informing me they were having banks cheat some of these funds they're holding that they're not supposed to be cheating. You can imagine the type of headache we're going to have if we have to try to get that money and all of a sudden we discover the bank is cheated. They still got to pay us, but it's going to be a mess. The other big concern is our electronic records are not matching up to our accounts. So we know we're going to have to go in there and inventory the safe. Then we're going to have to reconcile that safe, those records, with the electronic records. And then we're going to have to pick up the phone and start calling the security companies to find out whether these securities are still good. I'm estimating it's going to take a minimum of 3 to 6 months, one person working on that. So there's probably 500 securities in that safe, if not more. Next slide, please. As I alluded, we have 57 sites. Permits have expired and they have not been released. By accident, we actually billed them last year. A bunch of them called. And we got rid of what? About 15? 15 of those sites got cleared off our books. It's funny. A lot of these things are client savings accounts or that type of thing. There's money anchoring those securities. That money belongs to that property owner. It doesn't seem to be in a very big hurry to get his money back. Something I am definitely going to need help from industry. We've had this, I know the mining commission has had this discussion before. The reclamation factors are way too low. There's an inflation factor. If we start applying the inflation factors, the reclamation factors, and then turn around and say, you tell me your mine's in the last 25 years, and I'm going to add another inflation factor to this, it's going to greatly increase the reclamation cost. When you compare our reclamation, well, in fact, I had someone consulting engineers just tell me yesterday, our number's about 1/10. It's actually going to cost you to reclaim those sites. That is something I will definitely have to reach out to industry to get support and resolve that. I certainly do not want to use the federal system, which literally breaks it down to the elements. It goes to the point where it's calculating out how much fuel it's going to take you to do. That's maybe where we're going to end up. A more positive one is, and I've made progress on this, is the mining program's website is being revised, being more in tune to what the rest of the DEQ has got. We hope it'll be much more user-friendly, and it's going to be more graphic by nature. Next slide, please. Some of y'all know that we use a database called iBeam, which is basically been around since I've been in state government. That's like 20 years, 23 years. It's outdated. It was set up, it was funded per division. So some divisions have a great database. Falls his example. Some of them aren't. Tracy's shaking his head. He remembers. Tracy did a great job setting up with it, what he had. It's nowhere near the standards, today's standards. We still use the living crap out of it, Tracy. Good job. So once CRM is in place, it's going to come in pieces. One thing industry's been requesting, well, two things they've been requesting that they should get very quickly is to be able to submit your applications electronically, and you'll be able to pay your annual bills electronically. It'll also give you all the ability to track where the permits are. Will we see it by 2023? I was promised it 6 months when I first got here. I'm not betting. I'm hoping it will be here. I hope certain elements are. I have a hour-and-a-half presentation to go through that occurred last week while I was in Scotland. So, fun. Next slide, please. Emerging issues. Life of mine. Site maps are getting outdated. Inspectors are going out there telling me the maps don't work. I've been telling them they need to let me know. When we sent out the letters for the annual reclamation reports, they were informed that they're going to have to submit a new map, which ultimately could force them into having to modify their applications. Once again, I have to have the staff to do that, but we know a lot of the maps are outdated. Early on, we agreed to use Google. Most mines don't change that much. So Google gives you a fair representation, but the numbers in some cases do not add up. And in fairness, on the other side of the coin, you really don't want some of these sand pits spending $5,000 to $10,000 a year hiring a surveyor to basically duplicate the same work he did the year before. What I am telling the inspection staff is if they find a map that doesn't agree, let me know. We're going to slap a letter into their annual reclamation fund, says send us a new set of maps. And if they have to start modifying that map a lot, that will trigger a modification. Backfilling of pits. We have two companies that approached us on this. We actually just recently sent out one of the applications. The real issue is the subsidence. In the first case, the pit's only about 200 to 300 feet deep, Adam.
One's about 200, the other one's 400.
Yeah, what we agreed to on that one was they're gonna be allowed to backfill it. They're gonna have to dome it. So if it's the sides, there'll be no pools. Mining law specifically says you can't reclaim such as you got stagnant ponds. They're also gonna have to put in their deed, put in the deed, that the site was backfilled, was mined and backfilled. This is the same thing Waste is doing. So that's the first site. The second site is, we have an application for a fairly large industrial mineral site. And they want to backfill the pits. Those pits are going to be about 550 feet deep. Same issue. Decided. I just got their most recent reply, came today. I'll get that out tomorrow. I'll be curious to see, I originally told them they're going to have to compact it. Industry's come back and told me, not actually. Normally, the equipment running over the will compact to 85, 90% compaction. Over time, that'll get up to a reasonable amount. If they dome it, it should be okay. I will eventually probably have to come to the commission for guidance on this, is whether this is acceptable. I'm sure y'all can tell me better. My understanding in Europe, backfilling pits is common. So it's coming to the States. Land is becoming harder and harder to get your hands on. And in the case, my first case, the movement of the dirt was actually to free up areas at other quarries. All that's going on. One of the issues, I'm getting ahead of myself. I'm gonna let Adam take care of coastal discharge of mining, dewatering, and saline. He's had a few problems. I don't want to call them problems, but he's had to deal with this a couple of times.
Just on this, one of the things that we've seen here is we've gotten comments from the Division of Marine Fisheries and the Division of Water Resources for a few sand operations that are proposing to dewater their sites. Some of them are going into ditches, and then the ditch is traveling a pretty good distance, either a quarter to more, maybe even up to a half mile, till it reaches a wetlands. Some of it is first a freshwater wetland, then a marine saline wetland, and then eventually reaching either an estuary or bay that has been deemed high quality waters. And Marine Fisheries has brought up the fact that, and that if too much freshwater or if temperature changes, it could impact the environment there. So the both divisions of Water Resources and Marine Fisheries have provided comments on those, and with the applicants that have, I guess they've all, some of them have been approved, some of them are still in review, have provided mitigations for that. So providing the exact gallons per day of discharge rather than what the pump can do. Also providing more information as to how the water is being routed. But we are seeing more comments brought up by Water Resources and Marine Fisheries on this particular issue, where freshwater is mixing with saline environments.
Any questions on that? Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Mining legacies. Division of Waste Management is raising concerns about leaching material and degradation of industrial mineral operations. Currently, with the lithium applications, this is where this is showing up first. There's some limitations here. there's a thing called the Bedville Amendment, which is related to RECA, where basically the EPA says if you're doing mineral processing, okay, that's exempted due to this amendment. If you're doing mineral beneficiation, that's subject to EPA. Specifically, waste. And where a lot of these companies get in trouble, if you mix those two waste streams, you brought the whole thing into it. Now, Waste Management tells me they really don't want to be involved with regulating mine waste. So they got us to do LEAF, which is Leaching Environmental Assessment Framework Test Method. It is not a single pH, it's broad spectrum pH, time sensitive test. So basically, you don't want to get away with just one pH test. You're going to have to do the whole spectrum. It's going to have to be over time. Fortunately, for most of the sand and gravel operations, this is not an issue. Not being pulled in. The industrial mineral sites. We're concerned. You know, there are some issues with the lithium deposits. Piedmont Mineral has done this testing. I haven't had a chance to look through results. I just got them. I would not be surprised. I've already told Albemarle they're going to have to do it too. Albemarle is the second lithium operation. Some probably knows them well. And they are looking at opening up the old lithium pit at Kings Mountain. We have heard issues concerning fluoride from the Feldspar quartz operations up to Spruce Pines. They will most likely be required to do this also. Next slide, please. Proflight operations. My background is proflight. I did work at R.T. Vanderbilt's mine down in Robbins. I can personally offhand tell you there's pyrites and there's fluorides there. And I can tell you in my conversations with other people in the industry, there are some fluorides up at the Hillsborough site with Fresco or Piedmont Mineral. They will probably eventually have to do the PCS phosphate is specifically exempted from the record. But their solution to the leachable is now almost 30 years old. And we've been talking to them, and they will probably be requested to also do the leaf just to make sure that what they agreed to in the 80s and the 90s is still appropriate. Water and waste are very concerned about the PCS. Any questions concerning leaf? Next slide, please. I think that's it. There are lots of other issues in front of the program, but these are the ones I think we're all going to probably hear the most about soon. If you have any questions concerning other issues with the mining program, please let me know.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Miller. Any questions for Mr. Miller, Mr. Park? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on to the next item, which is a commission's priority discussion. It's our last item on the agenda. And so, members, just want to, it's been a while, obviously, since the commission has met. Give you a time to express what you see as priorities for us. Appreciate Mr. Miller's review of the technical aspects of all that goes on. And I know that I am the newest one and the least with the industry to try to understand that. So I might take a little extra time with Mr. Miller. But from your perspective, those of you that have been here a while, what kind of priorities for us do you see that you'd like to sort of put on the docket? I want to Mr. Connor online. Mr. Connor, I know you mentioned earlier to me offline that we needed to make an appointment for you on the Soil and Water Commission. I know that's a administrative function, but I want to make sure I get that on the agenda or on the next agenda. Is that right?
Yes, yes, for the Sedimentation Erosion Control Committee.
Sedimentation, okay. For the commission members, is there a larger group effort or a larger focus priority that you'd like to see upcoming for us? Anybody have anything? Mr. Reynolds mentioned to me rules. There will be a point at some time in the future, probably sooner rather than later, that there will be a rulemaking body. I want to defer to Mr. Reynolds and let him sort of explain that briefly for the commission.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. One of the things that we've heard a lot about the department and what their responsibilities were in enforcing the Mining Act and the rules of the commission, but specific to your duties and responsibilities, you'll be responsible for adopting administrative rules related to the Mining Commission and the Mining Act, Mining Compact, and the exploration of uranium here in North Carolina. All of those things that are in your specific authorities and under Chapter 74. You have some rules now. Those rules have been in place since 1976. I won't mention that that's also the year I was born. But you have those rules in place now. Some of you may be aware that I think it was in 2010, the legislature passed what's called the Rules Review and Readoption process, meaning that every commission, every 10 years, has to go through the rules and decide which rules they are going to keep in place as necessary. And if the rules are designated as necessary, you have to readopt them as if they're new rules. And if they're designated as unnecessary, then they go away. This commission has not been burdened with that to the extent that other commissions have had to be burdened with. And I say burden not as a judgment of the policy decision, but simply as an acknowledgement that it takes a lot to do this. This commission didn't have to do that because this commission hadn't been until now. We're going to be having a conversation with the codifier rules and the Rules Review Commission about putting this commission on the schedule for readopting rules and designating them as necessary or unnecessary. And at the next meeting, I plan on giving you a greater overview of those things. So be prepared for all that fun. Talk about the APA, the Administrative Procedures Act, rule readoption, all of that good stuff that only lawyers think is fun. And only some of us who are sadistic lawyers think that's fun to go through all that process. But we'll be talking about it. I'll be bringing that to the commission for its consideration at the next meeting about getting on a schedule for both designating the rules and publishing the designation of those rules as being either necessary or unnecessary. Having that report approved and submitted to the RRC as well as a schedule for completing the adoption date. And one thing that I'll also bring to your attention in advance is that when we have that discussion, you'll also hear me say that this doesn't mean that you can't also adopt new rules as part of the process. You absolutely modify those rules and adopt new rules as you see fit. But it's going to require a lot of effort, especially for you, Mr. Chairman. Congratulations on that. To look at these rules along with the other members of the commission.
Okay.
Question. Next two meetings that are scheduled are going to be here. As we kind of get our sea legs, so to speak, and get rules and everything adopted, then at some point, are we going to be able to do some meetings at mine sites or do some things off or outside of Raleigh at specific locations, get some exposure to some other operations?
For some background, we'll have to discuss that with the commission and the chair. The commission has no budget. So for activities like that, we have to identify a budget to offset costs that might be incurred for such an activity. So we'll circle back with the commission and the chair and council on requirements for the ability to be able to do those things.
I would be interested in doing that. So that. Any other commission priorities, perspectives from commissioners? Okay, that concludes our agenda. I'll look, unless there's something else wide open for the commission, I'll look for a meeting to adjourn, or rather a motion to adjourn. Motion by Mr. North,
Second.
second by Mr. Batten. Any discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Appreciate it.